See, good morning, everyone. I think we're being recorded at this point. This is Gardening Tips Live um, on the Knoxville Area Gardening Tips Facebook group. And let me get stuff going. My name is Amy Hahn, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. And I'm joined by my friends and fellow Master Gardeners, Lee Cheek, Margot Emery, and Toby Johnson. And we're going to get this shared into the Facebook group, the Knoxville Area Gardening Tips Facebook group. And it is saying I am live now. Share to the group. And something isn't working because there's a technical error. Okay, work. This time it worked. Yay.
I'm sending vibes.
Oh. And then I'm typing, please click. This is only during the live. You need to click into the video to comment. If you comment in the post, we don't see it. See our responses. Okay. And I'm going to hit post. And then we'll get that posted to the group. And I just got the notification that July 2nd is our date that we have to have all our old videos that we want to keep
July 2nd is
downloaded.
our date that we have to have all our old videos that we want to keep.
I hear myself.
July 2nd is our date that we have to have all our old
That's not me.
we want to keep.
I hear myself. Okay, what am I doing? Oh, I know what I'm doing. Okay. Sometimes I lose lose track of where I am on the computer stuff, and we shouldn't have any connection problems because I am now on fiber. So hopefully that'll be less problematic than we used to be. No comments yet. And this is actually in the video. Not in the video, in the post. And I'm going to do at everyone to let our folks know. So Margot, make sure you're clicked into the video because I see your good morning comment and that's in the post. Does that make sense? Margot, you're muted.
I clicked into it apparently, but apparently it didn't work. I'll try
Oh,
again.
try again. Yeah. Okay, let me make sure I'm at the place I want to. Yeah, I see Lee said good morning. Toby said morning, y'all. And I'm going to say good morning. Morning. It is a beautiful morning and it isn't as steamy as it's been. It has been really steamy here. And we'll talk a little bit about the weather. Oh, I took some screenshots of weather that didn't end up in the post. So we'll just go and look at the weather toward the end, after the slideshow. That'll be fine. Because sometimes people what is it? The weather forecast that you see is a little misleading. Should I talk about that now since I've gone that way?
Sure.
Okay, so you look at today's forecast, and let me see if I can pull this up. Let's see, which weather was I looking at? I am not even sure. But let me look at the one I usually look at, which is I actually tend to, on my computer, I look at a service called Wonderground. And on my phone and my iPad, I look at, I guess it's Apple Weather, and I look at Yahoo Weather. I look at multiple weather sources. Let's see, this is Knoxville full forecast. So let me share my screen, and then you can see what it's saying. But it's sort of hard to see what it's saying. Okay, so for today, the forecast here is listed as partly sunny, Ooh, I really want you to see what the Apple weather said, because the Apple weather said 40% chance of rain. So, oh, and I shared the wrong thing when I shared, and it's making it hard to see stuff.
Yeah, and weather.com said we're in the 40s and 50% chance of rain this afternoon.
Yeah. And so, which one is it? Weather.com?
Yeah.
Okay, let me go to there. Weather.com. And let me, so that might be where the one I'm looking at gets their weather info. And it's being slow. It shouldn't be slow. Okay. Oh, here's Knoxville. Okay. Okay, see in depth forecast, because you really have to go a little bit deeper. Because when I looked at that 40% chance of rain, you would think we're getting rain. But are you
Yeah,
seeing these
pop-up-orama.
annoying pop-up ads? Yeah, this is really annoying. Okay, so you look into it and okay, thunderstorms possible after 2 p.m. There's one dot of moderate. So that's like 10, 15 minute. And does it give you, this one isn't giving you predicted, I mean, so many ads. This is annoying. Okay. And it's, I give up.
Yeah.
I give up on that. Okay, let's just give up on that. Okay, and well, I'm gonna run and get my iPad really quick, and I will set it to where it's gonna upload those images I took earlier. I'll be right back.
The best way to look is the Doppler radar if you
Yeah.
really want to project. And especially this time of year, it's coming from the southwest. Usually the weather comes that way. My husband always looks at I call him Dr. Doppler because he is a doctor. He is a scientist, but
Yeah.
he's not a weather person, but he does watch the weather and he'll show. And even when the weather comes through in our area, often the clouds will part and we'll get rain around our little area. And we watch it all the time. And it's like, what is this weird,
Mm-hmm.
weird weather anomaly, you know? So there's even microclimates,
Oh, yeah, very much so. Okay, so let me go to these. I've got it where I can get to the images now. But let me get to them. Do you ever fight with your computer? I know I talk about this
All the
pretty
time.
regular. Okay, so let me share this now. Now I've got it. Okay, so this is what the forecast looked like this morning. So 40% chance of rain. Um, temperatures are cooler. I like that. And then it looks like, oh, we're definitely going to have rain after, 3 and after. But if you click into this on this particular service, you look at it and you scroll down. So this is actually the chance of precipitation for today. So it goes up to maybe an 18% chance of rain at most, but they're predicting a tenth of an inch in the next 24 hours. I'm not going to get excited about a tenth of an inch. That's not really going to help my garden. And then I looked for the next day and it's like 4/10 of an inch. And so, as you look at the weather forecast, if you're looking at a service that gives you a prediction for how much rain, and I know Wonderground, there's a way to see that, and some of the other services, it'll give you an idea. So I am definitely, okay, as we go through my slides, you will see a hose on many of the slides. because when we get under an inch of rain a week, I want to add some water to my garden. I have a lot of organic matter, so my plants can take less water, but if we have that high a temperature and that little rain, I need to add water for them to do okay. I guess I'll just go into the slideshow. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's this is Toby's what she's been working on.
Yeah. I thought I would share. I'm in Washington State in Western Washington. You can see the gray skies. It's usually sunny this time of year, but the last few days it's been a little, which has actually been beneficial because I've been planting in my boxes, and a couple, I think it was last week or the week before, I shared sort of some preliminary look at our hugelkulture boxes, which we filled the bottom of the boxes with sticks and logs, and then the next layer was compost, or not compost, I'm sorry, mulch and leaves, and then the next layer was cardboard, and then grass, and then I'm trying to remember. If you Google it, you can find different people do it a little bit differently. Some we put in some of the kitchen scraps, and then real compost, steer manure compost, and then some garden soil. And what we're trying to do is really create a good soil environment. The last thing I need to do is get some worms and because underneath I put some landscape fabric, because this is on gravel, and I may move these boxes. You'll see they're made with these temporary these bricks you can get now that you can put in the corners and then put wood slats. Those are 2x6 pieces of wood, and these are about 4x8. And that's our grow house. And we've taken the poly off of it because it was getting ripped, in the wind and the sun. And I was planning on putting poly on the sides just to keep the critters out, but I'm actually not having problems with critters right now. And we have deer and bunnies and stuff. So I'm wondering if there's so much else going on and birds. There's so much else in the yard for people, for them to eat, for our critters to eat, that they don't really care about the garden. So
I
this
was
is
going to ask about the worms. Okay, so I know in parts of the US that were glaciated at one point, there are no native worms, but here in Tennessee we do have some native worms.
huh.
Are there any, up where you are in Washington State?
I think so. I'll have to look into that. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
seeing those as a kid.
Yeah. Well, worms have been introduced. They
I see what you're
weren't.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure,
But
Amy. That's a good point.
yeah, in the parts of the country that were glaciated. So some people, if you're people in New England, oftentimes this is where I hear it most, and probably up in Washington State where it
Yeah,
was glaciated, they
yeah,
talk about, don't bring worms in, they're not native.
right.
But here we do have native worms, though most of the worms you see are probably going to be like imported red wigglers and other worms.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Well,
that's
the soil in our yard, in our garden, is glacial till. It's very sandy.
mm,
Uh, although there is, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm going to look
yeah.
into that.
But you're not aiming for a quote native original habitat anyway.
Right. We're
Yeah.
not inside these boxes. They're not
Right.
native. There's nothing native. Well, actually,
Yeah.
there's a lot of wood from our garden.
Uh-huh.
But you could argue that that's not native either, because a lot of it's from our orchard, which, you know,
Right.
orchard trees are not, they're
Mhm.
an amalgam of a couple, rootstock and
Right.
the fruiting part of the tree. So
Mhm.
yeah, but
Okay.
so
I'm going to
and
move you on to the next slide.
yeah, good, thank you. So our weather right now is very interesting. It's kind of cool. It's like early spring, and I'm learning the different, you know, because I haven't been here for a while and lived here for a while. And we're in the 60s and 50s, sometimes down to the 40s. And
Mm.
so I had some things in pots, and it took me a while to get these boxes in. It took a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. So I have some peas, and these sticks are from our yard when we took down some trees, and they were so straight that I thought, oh, these are going to make really great trellises. So I saved a bunch, and here we go. I have my first trellis from the sticks
Mhm.
so we're trying to reuse everything. That's kind of our philosophy.
Awesome.
So I have peas in the same, I have peas as well as some kale. I put in
Mhm.
marigolds in the corners for pollinators, to attract pollinators. And so I've kind of got beans and peas going right now,
Mhm.
which is kind of interesting. Usually that's not the case. Usually you start with peas and then you put beans in later.
Yeah, around here, you could really, peas are done
Yeah.
here.
And these
And
don't look great because they've been
yeah.
sitting, but we'll see.
Mhm.
So you can go on to the next slide.
Yeah, and saw my first imported cabbage moth this week.
Uh-oh,
So,
yikes.
yeah, but I don't have any cabbage crops planted.
Yeah, and we're not in the 80s at all. And these are, so you can see my beans on the right-hand side, and then
Yeah.
I planted some squash. Unfortunately, this year I'm not planting, I would say 70% of what's in these boxes, or 60% are plants I bought at the transplants I bought at
Mhm.
the store. And then I have some, and you can see there, those uh it's zucchini in the middle, zucchini,
Mhm.
um some squash, and they look a little floppy, but they've
Yeah.
perked up since. You can go on to the next
So they've got
slide.
a little bit of transplant shock going on.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so we also have an orchard, and we've done a massive amount of pruning. I was a little, I was a little nervous about it because really it's not the right time of year to prune, but the weather is not super hot. And these trees were just really suffering under, some of the branches had broken off and they were, kind of hanging
Mm.
there. There was some dead material, not a lot actually. Trees are tough. They never have really been cared for, so the trunks are all over the place and wrapped around each other and all that.
Mhm.
So we just decided, prune while the shears are sharp. So
Yeah.
we really got in there and pruned pretty hard. And we're finding that our trees are doing great. They're loving it. They're loving to have all the airflow. I think for
Mhm.
this particular tree, it had a lot of worms last year, and I'm thinking that
Mhm.
I'll have less damage to those apples and less kind of pesty stuff going on. We'll see. But they're starting to look very beautiful. So I'm learning. Here's some more of our apples. I'm just like in love. You can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So those are cherries. If you can see in the middle top, there's some red cherries starting to, yeah, there you go. We have a
Mm.
huge cherry tree that is not a dwarf in one side of our orchard. And at this point,
Mm.
every single cherry is picked clean by birds. Every single one. I mean, I kept going out there, and as soon as they would get ripe, so at this point, and it's a very tall tree, so it's not going to be
Mm.
a dwarf, and it's right by some other conifer trees, and so I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, that tree belongs to the birds, fine. This tree is away from there, and they're not going for this tree yet, so I'm hoping they don't discover it. It's not that far away
Yeah.
from the other one, so you know, so you could go on.
Mhm.
So that's from the back, and you can see in the foreground, so you can see some of our trees on the left, that tallest tree on the far left, on the very left, Amy, that not those,
Right.
but right next to that one, yes, that's
Oh,
that
okay.
cherry. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, and we have some apple. We have a pear tree, which is amazing.
Nice.
And then if you look in the foreground, these are all
Mhm.
um, uh, little blueberry bushes. We had a bunch of these that they had planted, a huge
Mhm.
patch. Gave about 12 away to my nephew.
Mhm.
But you can see that I have a few with that,
Yeah.
they have grass growing around them. They weren't
Mhm.
planted properly. they weren't tended to properly.
Mhm.
So we're having to, kind of cut back the grass and, try to amend. So I think it's gonna be a process for these blueberries, probably I would say a couple years before we really
Yeah.
see good blueberry production. And the deer might go right through and just take them out, and like eat them. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see. I might have to put a little fence around them. I don't know.
And hi, Susan. We're glad you're joining us. And I'm figuring you're probably talking about birds eating the cherries, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, those darn birds. So,
Mhm. Oh,
we
I
got to
gotta.
live with wildlife. We've
Yeah.
seen, we have deer, we have coyote. I just saw a coyote the other day. We have bald eagle. We have, I know I haven't seen, but we have bobcat, cougar, bear. But folks have seen on their game cameras in their yards.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, and hi,
and
Brenda. I'm glad you're joining us. After Toby's done, I'll tell you what blueberries. We're talking about blueberries for a minute.
Yeah, so here's more of that. You can just see all of this underneath
Oh,
those trees
okay.
were that was grass that was
Mm-hmm.
grown up, and there were lots of suckers coming up. It was like it was
Mm-hmm.
impenetrable. So now it's airy, you can walk through. We
Mm-hmm.
tried to most branches that were crossing or touching,
Uh-huh.
we pruned from the bottom up, but we did and then anything diseased, there wasn't a lot of disease, but things that were broken, and we'll just see. We're watching them, and they're doing well. It's almost like they really enjoyed being pruned.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, they are, what is it? Apples are domesticated. They're not
right.
like the wild apple plants that,
Yeah.
are
We have
original.
we also have crabapple that I've just left alone because they're kind of more. The other thing I did was I went through all my apple trees, and apples grow on spurs. And you really want to prune down to about 2 apples per spur to get a large apple. And, it's hard to pluck those babies out because you really want them, but you have to be a little bit, you know, if you really want bigger apples, you've got to give the tree, we want it to not send energy to a million little apples. You want maybe 500,000 little apples. So I went through each spur and pulled off any of the extra apples. So that's what I'm doing. I'm learning about fruit orchards. I love the fruit trees. They're just beautiful. Um, and I'm really excited to start picking stuff. It'll be a while more for the apples and the cherries. The one tree, I think we got about a week more, and the birds might get them before I do. If I don't want the birds to get them, I have to put netting over, and which I'm not really a big fan of
Mm, okay.
because birds get stuck in netting.
Right. Yeah, I have found a bird that got trapped in netting and it's very sad. Okay,
Yeah.
so Toby
Oh.
was not actually here for this picture, but it's actually at her house. And so this is the first thing I saw when I went over there um, was this bed, and it apparently
This is
had
my house in
tomatoes.
Knoxville, I should
Yeah,
say.
it had tomatoes in it because there is some lovely volunteer tomato plants here.
Lots.
Yeah, aren't they nice? And they're sort of in clumps. So there's that
Mm-hmm.
one, and then there's this one here. So there's
Mm-hmm.
like 4 or 5, and they're nicely spaced.
Yeah.
There is a lot of crabgrass,
Yes, there is.
but all in all, that looks pretty darn good.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
had a last year we had a
Mhm.
volunteer or two come up, and I staked
Yeah.
them, and we ate
Yeah.
off of them. They were
Right.
fine.
And volunteer tomatoes might not actually be exactly what you planted, but they're good tomatoes usually.
Yeah.
Okay. Brenda says she's still having trouble with groundhog or raccoon. Let's see, her strawberries um,
Oops.
are doing well in a planter, but scared to put it in your yard. Yeah. Um, don't know where to put a strawberry bed. Um, there's weed killer used around my fence, so I'm afraid of the runoff from where the fences are. Do you have any suggestions where to put the garden? Does depend what you're planting. A strawberry bed can be a little more shaded if they're deciduous trees than a vegetable bed. So, we can talk on that more. Um, and we'll come back to the blueberry varieties too, because blueberries they really love morning sun and a little bit of afternoon shade.
Yes.
But some of the varieties can take full sun here.
Yeah, I found that the ones that were thriving in our giant patch, because
Hmm.
who had the house, they put, I don't know, 50 blueberry plant. I was like, what? Are you thinking about doing commercial? What? Is that they are in afternoon shade, and in that was where the
Hmm.
most I let them all grow, and I said, okay, the best ones, those are the ones I'm gonna keep, the ones that are most robust.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so let's go back to, so this is Toby's allium bed
yay.
with garlic and shallots and leeks. The leeks were in full flower, and at that point, they're not going to taste good. So I actually just left them.
Yeah, and they're pretty.
Right. And so, if I were an awesome friend, which I'm a good friend, but I don't know if I'm that awesome or have that much energy, I would go over and cut the flowers off before they go to seed because leeks will seed everywhere.
It's okay, Amy.
Yeah,
I
I
have so
know.
fun.
Yeah, that's what I would do if it were at my house. Okay, so you can see some of the garlic is laying over, and then others are standing up with these spikes
Yes.
on them. Okay, so the ones that are laying over are actually the soft neck garlics. There's two main kinds of garlic. And then the ones with the spikes are hard neck because those are what the scapes do when they get older. And if they were left even longer, they would have little baby garlic bulbs in them. And you could actually start more garlic from them. Those are called bulbules.
Hmm.
Okay. But
Usually I cut the scapes when they're curled over and I eat them because they're good.
yes, yeah. And when they're just have a little bit of, they start with a curl
Hmm.
and they are tasty. I like them. Okay, so this is partway through the harvesting. There weren't very many weeds. And the
Yeah, I put a
shallots,
fair amount of mulch in there when we planted
mhm,
them.
yeah. So this is, where I'm harvesting them. And for the most part, I was just able to gently pull a couple of them. I started to feel the leaves start to break as I was pulling them, so I did a trial. I was glad I didn't go in there with a fork because there is drip irrigation through this bed.
Yes. Forgot
Yeah.
to tell you that, Amy.
Yeah. So if you have drip irrigation, be careful using a digging fork. But it was soft enough that it didn't need it. And then the shallots, there were lots of small shallots. So you can see they're almost clumps, and each clump would have been where one shallot bulb was planted, and each one was probably 8 or 9 shallots.
Mm,
Yeah. And so this is the harvest. So,
not
and
bad.
this is all the weeds. So not very many weeds.
Yeah, I put a lot of leaf. It
Mhm.
was like 4 or 5 inches of,
Okay, and it's pretty much broken down at this
yeah.
point. So it was just a light covering. And so that's the garlic harvest there. I will tell you, all of your garlic heads were at least twice the size of mine this year because yours were in a bed and they were mulched and didn't have the weed competition. So
Yeah.
that is important.
And I
Um,
did put a little bit of side dressing of, like bulb
mhm.
uh fertilizer because I knew I wasn't going to be around,
Right. So they were actually fertilized and weeded and weed prevention. Oh, let me show you something that's sort of
and watered
interesting
regularly.
that I saw. Okay, some people say, is it important to put the cloves the right way? Do you see this one that's curled here?
Ah, clove went in wrong way.
That one went in probably upside down. And
Yeah.
they will sort of right themselves, but the stem will end up being a little funky.
I must have missed that one.
Yeah, or it got turned over by something. Who knows?
Yeah, well, we have a groundhog under our deck.
Yeah, but they were all still there. And so
Yeah.
they are sitting on a rack actually in my yard care garage drying because you do not want to try to cure onion crops when it's nearly 100 degrees outside. That'll actually cook them
Yeah.
and not cure them. Curing is just drying them out so they store well.
Well, thank you, Amy. I
Yeah,
hope you enjoy them.
yeah. Okay, another this is an interesting thing that I found. It wasn't in my garden, but it was in a friend of mine's garden, and it's just a little piece of snake skin. So apparently a snake shed there. And we're seeing a lot of reports, people are saying, what is this snake? 99% of the time, if you leave snakes alone, you're fine, and they take care of rodent issues. Um, Also, they're saying we only have two poisonous snakes. There are reports of a third one that's mostly in West Tennessee. But we do have rattlesnakes, copperheads, and then Lee said her husband has seen cottonmouths here. And so those are the only poisonous snakes, but we have lots of non-poisonous snakes. And even the poisonous snakes, almost all snake bites are because people are messing with the snake.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are incidences where someone will accidentally step on a snake and it'll bite. And that could be a non-poisonous or a poisonous just because they need to get away from you. But snakes generally want to get away from you. I have seen black racers. I've seen corn snakes. I think I've seen a milk snake here in my yard. And I don't even see one a year, but I'm pretty sure they're still here because I'm not overrun with rodents. And that is the main thing the snakes eat. They really help control rodent populations. So if you see a snake, give it space, let it run away from you, because that's what it wants to do. Um, and so, that's just the word on snakes. Okay, this is a weed that if you see it in your yard, you're going to probably want to chop it down and get rid of it. This is common ragweed. It's not blooming now. Its foliage is sort of pretty, but it is what causes hay fever in the fall, around the same time that the goldenrod is blooming. Has very light airborne pollen. This is another weed I'm seeing reports of. I'm pretty sure this is called horsetail weed. There's a couple different names for weeds like this, and it does almost look like it's going to be a flower, but this one is a weed. Oh yeah. Susan said she thought that the ragweed was a kind of fern. No, it does have pretty cut leaves, and I wouldn't hesitate to put it in a flower arrangement, the leaves. Okay, this is another weed that is actually rather pretty. It is bindweed, and it will cover things up. I think it got its name bindweed because could get so bad in like cornfields that it would bind up the combines. So it is a pretty nasty weed. It's also the other thing to know, it's also a native plant. So not all native plants um, are desirable in your house and in your garden and landscape. This is another one that some people call a weed because it can expand its patch pretty aggressively. This is um, tiger lily, and this is a tiger lily that's in the lily family, and not the same. Some people call the orange daylilies tiger lilies. So you have to be careful of the common name. Those are both the common names for it. So this is in the Asiatic lily family. All of it's poisonous to eat. I mean, fine to look at it, fine to use them in flower arrangements and stuff like that. Don't eat them. Daylilies, which is the other kind of tiger lily or other plant that's commonly called a tiger lily, are actually edible. So be very careful of common names because they can be very different plants. Okay, blueberries. I said we were going to talk about blueberries more. So, Brenda, this is blueberry plant. We're at the end of blueberry season. We're actually in a place that a couple different types of blueberries do well. Rabbit eye blueberries do really well here, and also the northern high bush blueberries do well here. Don't do quite as well as they do um, like in northern Illinois, but they really do well most years here. One thing that happens is blueberries do need consistent water. They're shallow rooted and they need acidic soil. So if you're going to put in blueberries, University of Georgia has some really good lists of varieties that do well in the South. And I also think North Carolina has some good resources that list specific varieties. Um, some of the blueberries, I have two rabbit eye blueberries that I don't know what they are. This one in the picture is a northern hybrid called Brigida. I also have a rabbit eye that's Climax, and my other two, I don't know what they are. They were given to me. Actually, a friend of mine said I could come and dig them up, and I did. And
Amy,
yeah,
Brenda asked, can you say the names again? I'm not sure if that's right.
Brigida is the northern high bush I have, and Climax is the rabbit eye that I have. And then I have two others that I don't know what they are. And it is recommended that you get at least two of the same type. I only have one northern high bush and it fruits really well. So I did plant more than one. Um, I haven't always been good at taking care of them. And so I have had quite a few die. And I didn't get the soil acidic enough for blueberries when I first planted them. So some of them declined because of the soil. Blueberries need very acid soil, so we always recommend doing a soil test first and working to adjust your soil before you plant your blueberries.
And it takes a while.
Yes, it
You
takes a
can't just
while.
you just can't put, the amendment in and, a couple weeks later you've got acid soil.
Right. Yeah, for moving things more on the acidic side, which is what the blueberries need, you usually put down sulfur, but microorganisms have to work on that sulfur to change the soil pH. And so it's not something that's going to happen instantly.
Mhm.
And if you add a lot of organic matter first, that'll actually prevent that soil pH from changing as fast as it would, because organic matter buffers or slows down pH changes.
Mhm.
So, interesting stuff. Um,
Mhm.
yeah,
That's why I was saying in my orchard, it's going to take me a few years. Although I think our soil, I have to get a soil test, but
yeah,
in the Northwest, soils tend to be more acid because we have, acid, of conifers, etc.
right, yeah. Well, in places that have lots of rainfall, like our soils here tend to be slightly acid, but not as much as blueberries want.
Mm-hmm.
Blueberries want very acid soil,
Mm-hmm.
compared to most plants. Just don't plant your blueberries and your asparagus next to each other, because asparagus likes actually more alkaline soils. So, it is good to know, have a little bit of knowledge, though sweet potatoes can take as acid a soil as blueberries can handle. So some years I actually will plant um, sweet potatoes as a ground cover under my blueberry around near my blueberries. I
Hmm.
don't plant them right in the blueberry roots, but I do direct some of the vines in that area as a ground cover because I don't
Hey,
want to.
got somebody. Hang on a second. I'm muted now.
Oh, are you here? Now you're muted. Okay. Oh, let's
I'll
see.
tell you why he's barking. The painters have arrived, and I think I better say farewell. They
Oh,
called a little
okay.
while ago and accelerated their schedule, and I told them not to come till after our show ends, but I don't think they listened that
They
well.
didn't, sometimes they don't.
All right, guys, farewell.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you later. Okay. Oh, this is a plant I always try to mention at least sometime during the year. It is called a ground cherry, and it is a sweet, it's like a tomatillo, but it's smaller and sweeter. And so if I zoom in here, you can see this is the little husk that the little ground cherry will develop in. And they're sweet. There's two main varieties out there. There's the flower. It's very distinctive. Two main varieties available. Pineapple and Aunt Molly's. I've planted both of them. I can't tell the difference. So if you're interested, go ahead and plant them. And you generally only have to plant them once because they tend to volunteer. So these ones here were volunteers. And so that'll be in the next couple of weeks, that'll be ripe and
Hmm.
ready to eat. And they're little yellow, sweet. Um, it's sort of if you imagined a cross between a tomato and a pineapple, but with not a whole lot of tomato flavor.
You
And
know, Amy, I've
yeah,
planted tomatillos
mm-hmm,
and I love planting them because, and I roast them and make
mm-hmm,
salsa, canned salsa with them, but also they're kind of nice because they they are very hardy, like they'll drop to the ground
mm-hmm,
and they're in their husks and they don't, the critters don't really get into them,
mm-hmm,
they're much less vulnerable, so they can sit for a while in your garden before you pick them up from the ground or harvest them off the so I like them as a in addition to tomatoes just
mm-hmm.
because they don't go bad very easily. Are ground cherries the same way?
Yeah, ground cherries will keep quite a bit. Um, I have had some years where I think I've had more of a rodent issue.
Mm,
They will,
yeah,
um, what is it? I'll find the husks empty
yeah,
the ground sometimes. One of the things is you don't want to harvest them until they just come off the plant. So I'll shake the plant and just pick up the ones that fall.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and they're just really, I call it. There's a couple plants I keep in my garden as what I call gardener's treats.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
the ground cherries are more of a gardener's treat. I have harvested enough to make a pie or make a jam out of, but they are small and it's a lot of work to husk them to get
Yeah.
enough for doing something like that.
Yeah, tomatillos are a little bigger and they're
Right.
viney, they're tall.
Mhm.
You have to
And
stake them.
tomatillos, you have to have two. You have to plant two
Really?
tomatillos
Huh,
because they are not self-fertile.
huh. I must have planted two then.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or they could have developed a self-fertile one now.
Yeah, because I
That
used
is
to
possible.
plant purple ones that when
Mm,
they ripen, they turn purple, a
huh.
light blush of purple on the green.
Okay, so it is possible that there are some self-fertile ones,
Hmm.
but generally you have to plant two to
Mm.
get fruit. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, speaking of fruit, I did actually get my first tomato this week. This is on an early girl plant. that I actually bought from the garden center. I did not start this myself. And it's
Yeah.
on deck where it is hotter, so it has grown a little faster. Does have a little bit of early blight going on. That's probably what this is with the angular, um, and the yellowing leaves, angular necrosis, dead stuff. Um, but I just took that leaf off. Um, with tomatoes, generally in this area, it is something you fight through the season, but it doesn't stop them from fruiting. Okay, this is another tomatoes. I always run tomatoes up the stairway on my deck. And so I will tie them so they stay up there. They don't hang on themselves. But starting to get some flowers there. So these are cherry tomatoes. And then this is another tomato that I have out on my cattle panel trellis. And it's a paste tomato, but it's a horn shaped. It's a variety called Pompeii, which I like quite a bit. And you can see the hose. And you can see the hose again. I finally got my pepper bed planted. And so I have 2 rows of peppers with my nice pepper cages, which they misnamed tomato cages at the garden centers.
Yeah, that's not going to
Because
work.
there's no way my tomatoes would fit in that size cage.
Even determinate varieties, too
Yeah.
small.
Yep. And then what I do is I have sort of the two edges are 2 rows of 7 pepper plants each, and in the center, I planted some Thai basil. And what I will do through the season is I will cut that Thai basil down and actually lay it down as mulch.
Mhm.
And I do have some shredded leaves that I do plan on putting down as mulch for this bed. Let's see, where do you get that metal siding? Are you
Oh, the
talking
cattle
about the
panel.
cattle panels?
Yeah.
These nice little things. Um, they came from Tractor Supply, and I actually hired one of my neighbors who had a trailer to bring them home for me because they are, I think it's 5 feet. No, it's 4 or 5 feet by 16 feet. So there was no way I could fit them in any of our vehicles.
You can get smaller, 8 feet as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the 8 feet, 2 8 feet. Okay, so I think I had him get 3 cattle panels. So that many 8 feet ones cost more than him getting the 16 feet plus what he was going to charge me for going and picking them up. So
Yeah.
yeah. So sometimes, it depends on what you have available for transportation.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so these are the beans, and I planted 2 different kinds of beans. The taller ones you can see are the Roger Newsom. That's an heirloom green bean that also makes a good dry bean. And then the ones in are a new bean to me. They're called whippoorwill, and they're a southern bean. So I've never grown those before. So I'm going to try those this year. This is these are different climbing squashes and cucumbers. I probably am going to have way more cucumbers than I can use. Squash I can always dehydrate to use later. I use dehydrating as my main preservation method and freezing. Okay, this is buckwheat. And if you end up with a vegetable bed through the season that you're not going to be replanting with something immediately, buckwheat is a great ground cover to put in. It'll help prevent weeds, but it'll also help keep your soil good and alive. It'll also shade it. But you can see that about half or slightly more of the flowers are open. This would be the stage at which you'd want to cut it off. And you can actually put the green part of it down. You can just lay that down and let that be mulch for your bed. And I think this is the last slide. This is the seed heads of my clematis.
Amy, I think I have a few more photos that I
Oh, you
uploaded.
did?
I think, maybe.
Let's see. Did they end up
Oh, there they
in
are.
here? Those are ones from another week, I thought.
Go further.
Okay, wait.
There should be some more about pictures of the boxes. There they are.
Oh, there they are. They just didn't make it in here.
Yeah. If you
Yeah,
want to go to the
okay.
beginning of the boxes.
Yeah. So this is more about the building of the
Yeah,
boxes.
so I talked about hugelkulture. I can't pronounce it, but you can see we're cutting down. This is all the pruning from this was a huge pile of pruning from the orchard. You can see the orchard out the back, and you can see us cutting down the leaves and the branches. And then we put cardboard in, you can see in the far
Okay.
box.
Yeah.
And then grass clippings and some food waste from our, from our just vegetative food waste, no cheese or meat or anything like that. So then we spread that out. And I made sure I didn't put any grass clippings where there had been any herbicide or anything like that. And we had all these old boxes. They don't have, from our appliances here, and they don't have any waxy coating on them. And so we put those over. So we're just layering things. The reason to have worms is worms love, they love to get in there and
Yeah.
eat up those boxes and the worm castings and all that. It just helps compost faster and better.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
There
And
should be
yeah,
a
they move
couple,
nutrients around.
there should be a couple more.
Let's see.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Okay.
If you click on the far right, so those are
That one.
that one, yeah. So I too, in the middle is I think it's a Cherokee purple, in the middle, and I too bought from the store,
Yes.
and you see there's 3 tomatoes on the bottom there.
Mhm.
I also, if you look in the left, there's a couple poblano peppers that are fruiting.
Nice.
Yeah, and I also put so some of the peppers are going, I put peppers, tomatoes, and then I planted some basil, just regular Genovese basil
Yeah.
by seed. That's not basil, that's actually another
Oh,
pepper.
that's another pepper.
Planted
Oh,
basil
okay.
by seed. And then I
Okay.
planted some in the back row, I planted some lettuces. So lettuces are
Oh,
nice because
back
as
there.
actually in the back of that box, but
Oh,
that
here.
second
Okay.
box, yeah.
Okay. Nice.
So I've got, like you, I've got some things starting to fruit because I bought early. Those are squash, I think.
Is
Yeah.
that
And
nasturtiums?
nasturtium. Yeah. So in the
Yeah.
corner, I either used marigold or nasturtium. Nasturtium are really hard to start. I've only
Yeah.
had success a few times. They have very large seeds. You have to nick the seeds. They like to start in the dark. And when I saw these at the store, I'm like, woohoo, I'm gonna, like
Yeah.
nasturtium, it's better to just buy them because they're so hard to start from seed.
Well, I think they'll do better where you are than here.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
I
That's
find when it
moderate.
gets really hot, they haven't done well.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
sometimes when it starts to cool down in the fall, I'll think they're dead, and then I'll see, oh, it's still alive.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward. They're edible. This
Hmm.
flowers are edible. Those are some peppers. I also put here and there, I have lettuces, radishes, just here and
Nice.
there tucked in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because for here, we're a little bit past lettuces and radishes.
Yeah, exactly. But here,
Yeah.
like it's been in the mid 60s in the daytime and in the 50s at night.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So Washington State has very different temperatures than we do.
yeah, very different. And then
Yeah.
I think I showed that already. So,
Right, that's your peas.
but yeah, that's what it looks
Okay,
like.
nice.
But it depends upon where you are in Washington.
That's
Yes.
true. Eastern
So
Washington is hot as heck.
Yeah, because it was 102 when
Oh
I
gosh.
in Kennewick, Washington here
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah,
Different places are very different.
Well, it's also High Plains Desert.
Mm,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
The Horse Heaven Hills. Yeah.
yeah.
desert is another thing entirely.
Yeah, and on the east flanks of the Cascades is where
Mhm,
like Wenatchee area is where there's a lot of fruit growing. It's where the most major part of fruit production happens is on
mhm.
that side because they can it's cool and it because it's
Yeah.
higher up, but it's also they get that really nice heat to ripen
And-
things.
Yeah, and I visited a friend
Mm,
over in Raymond, Washington on the coast, and the temperature didn't get above 60.
Yeah,
mm. That's
yeah,
real different.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
was
It's
a lot of fog. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really
Mhm.
interesting to be in a new climate. The growing zone's a little bit different. I think we're eight,
Yeah.
remember, but but also to check out the micro. We've had this property for a few years now, and we've given ourselves time to get to know the
Mhm.
microclimates of what happens in the garden where it's really hot. Like our front
Yep.
yard, super hot, and previous owners had planted plants, some arborvitae that died because there's not
Mhm.
irrigation. And so now we're considering, okay, we've got to have
Yeah.
drought tolerant plants in the front yard because it just bakes, and it's got um, glacial till soil, so the water just doesn't,
Mhm.
unless we want to mend it in beds. So it's really interesting. Anytime you get an, have a new garden or a new yard, take some time to
Yep.
not just go in there and immediately start planting. Give it a year and go through the seasons and plant a little bit,
Mhm.
plant test plants here and there,
Yeah.
but really give it a full 4 seasons to get to know what how your plant operate or how your yard operates. Otherwise, you're going to be, most likely you're and then observe you might be wasting plants because they'll die.
Right.
The other thing is to look as what else is already thriving there.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot to kind of just be observational and not rush in and try to get everything done. Now,
Yes.
raised beds are a completely different story because that's a completely cultivated kind of situation. But even then,
Mhm.
I was like, is inside the grow house the best place? That wasn't where I was going to put my vegetable garden
Right.
originally. I wasn't going to put it there.
Mhm.
But then I'm like, okay, I've got deer everywhere. I either
Yeah.
need the fence or, so all those things come into play when you're thinking about
Mhm.
how you're going to move forward with your landscape.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure there were reasons that the people who put those greenhouses up picked that location.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting, even inside the greenhouse, on
Mhm.
one end towards the where I put the peas, I
Mhm.
purposefully put the peas at that end of the greenhouse because it's more shaded in the afternoon.
Mhm.
So, like, even within a small area, and then I put the tomatoes at the far end where it gets the
Yeah.
most. So, even in a small area, you can pay attention. Now, I will be rotating, and I did 4 boxes on purpose because I will be
Mhm.
rotating plants each year. So,
Right.
so you can microclimate is a big deal, bigger than we think.
Mhm. Yes, it
So,
is.
yeah,
Well, what is it? I just noticed, and I saw Lee do
you
teach
gave us the timeout, man.
time. It is 10 o'clock, and so it is time for us to wrap up the show. And what is it? Glad for those who have joined us today, and glad we were able to answer a few questions. And hope to see you all next week. As always, what we're doing now is we are going to be uploading this to YouTube, so it will be available, and we'll get the comments edited and posted in the description there as soon as possible. And have a happy time in your garden and enjoy the slightly cooler weather this week. Um, so happy gardening, everyone, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.